Yo, what's good? Welcome to the inaugural numero uno episode of Taylor Talks Celtics. I'm your boy Adam Taylor. I'm joined by my homie compadre, co-host in crime, and the resident cap guy, Mr. Billy Calabrese. Billy, regular season's over. There's a lot to talk about. I want to jump it straight in with JD Davison getting signed. The reason I want to start here is because we saw him play on Sunday against the Hornets, and I feel like there's some stuff to talk about there. So JD Davison signed a 2-year deal with the Celtics this year plus next year. So really, it's like a 14-month deal with the Celtics, but it is what it is, right? I've been with the team for 3 seasons, been in Maine for all 3 of them on a 2-way deal, just named G League MVP. Comes into the Hornets game, and I think the biggest takeaway for me is he needs to be more willing to shoot the free ball. I think there was a play early in the game where he turned down a free to drive the lane and shoot a mid-range floater. And in my head, I can just imagine John Mazzulla absolutely going crazy about that in the locker room. Probably didn't happen, but I can envision it. How are you feeling about the JD signing? Obviously, he's just going to be insurance and bench depth. He has earned that opportunity.
Yeah, it feels more like graduation, man. Like this dude put in the time, put in the work. He won G League MVP. I still don't think like he'll even dress for a playoff game. And then next year, let's be honest, that is not a guaranteed for next year. Like he's going to need to have a good summer league. He's going to have a good training camp to keep that spot. But this is the reward for years of hard work and improvement. And there has been that. It's easy to forget. He's only 22 years old. But if I was him, I'd be watching like Jalen Brunson tape all summer. That's the kind of game he's really going to have to develop. He has to be able to attack the basket and finish. He has to be able to take some contact. Obviously, he's a smaller guy. He's going to get pancaked a lot of the time. But as long as he can take that contact, stay on his feet, not get just bullied over, and finish, he might have a future in this league.
You went with Jalen Brunson. I've always gone with a miniature Russell Westbrook. So I'm curious why you've gone Jalen Brunson. I'll give you my Westbrook take, and then you can give me your. And again, this is like wish version. No offense to JD Davison, but wish version Westbrook, wish version Brunson. I don't know why I can't pronounce that wish and then come off that with another word. That seems to not work for me. But for me, the Westbrook comparison is very much the athleticism, the ability to create chaos in the open court, rip and run type of guy, grab that rebound, get out, pressure the rim, make reads out of how the defense collapses or doesn't collapse once you're on the drive. That to me is very Westbrook-esque. And I think that Davison's inability to consistently shoot the free kind of coupled in with that athletic explosiveness, that kind of really makes me feel like a Westbrook style player, especially when you think of the added driving kick game that JD has and the way that JD likes to get that lob pass off or threaten that lob pass before letting the floater off. All of those things are things I feel like he's picked up watching some Westbrook tape. I do Brunson comparison, but I'm just not there because Brunson's so much more of a free level scoring type guard and so much more of a self creator than what you'd say Westbrook is. And I feel like Davison leans more towards play finisher, explosiveness, open court creator than someone like Brunson that thrives in the half court. So I'm definitely interested.
Yeah, my problem is his reaction time reading and playmaking. I think he's always in score mode, which is fine by me. I think that's a good mode for him to be in just because I don't trust his instincts playmaking yet. Now, maybe that is something that comes with time, but that's something that Westbrook always had. He knows when to make the right pass, how, and like I said, he does it to an extent where Westbrook would spam triple doubles because of how he would get assists. I just don't
Yeah,
see
this
that
boy
with
is wish
JD.
version, though. It's wish
Yes.
version.
Like it might even be like more of a Steve Francis kind of case where it's, yeah, he could play make a little bit, but really his thing is going to be scoring, which I would be totally cool with. Like I said, I think there's a place in the league for somebody like that.
That's fair. That's fair. I like the Steve Francis comp more. I will say that it doesn't really matter what this comp is. It's how he plays when he's on the floor. And I wrote about this. I think it was in today's 10 takeaways for Celtics blog. If it wasn't, then I probably wrote it for the newsletter post that isn't out yet. But it's very much along the lines of we're not going to see him during the postseason. If we see him, it's because somebody got very hurt, things went very wrong, or the Celtics are up by a landslide and things went very well, and it's the garbage time guys, like the developmental time guys that are on the floor. Other than that, I don't expect to see any of Davison once the postseason starts. And I'm fine with that. I think he understands that coming in as well. The question is, do we see him next season, especially in terms of what happens with Jrue Holiday, what happens with whoever, an insert player that could be traded here? And that's a discussion for another point. But I do think that if we are going to see Davison, if we are going to see him take that next step, he's earned that contract. Now he needs to earn that rotation spot, or at least spot minutes on a consistent basis. That will come next season. We won't see him this season.
Yeah, and I think his age is probably the factor that he got it over Drew Peterson. I think you could probably plan longer term with somebody that's 22 than somebody that's 25. It's just a little more flexibility, just taking care of that now. And like I said, they can cut ties after summer league. They can cut ties at training camp. They have lots of time in between to make a decision. So even though, like I said, this is like a graduation for him, he's still on the clock. He's got to put in the work and he's got to earn this spot on this team. But so far, so good. Because like I said, he's exceeded everybody's expectations so far. G League MVP, that's not nothing. And making the main roster of the championship team, that's freaking awesome.
I also think that I was a big Jrue Peterson guy to begin the season. He had a great preseason over in Abu Dhabi, a couple of good showings early in the season. But then every time he got an opportunity later in the year, it just underwhelmed a little bit. I felt he was pressing a little bit too much. Sometimes felt like he was too passive. Just didn't really find that same spark that he had earlier in the year. And I think that when you couple that kind of not fall off, but struggle later in the year with all the success Davison was having down in the G League, plus the age difference, it all culminated to make more sense giving Davison that contract. It also means that he's what is that now, the third guy to come through that developmental program now. That's like the Celtics drafted him late in the second, developed him over 3 years. Now he joins Sam Hauser and he joins Nemi that have really been like developed and come up through there. You can add in Luke Cornett if you want. He spent a bit of time down in the G League. You can add in Jordan Walsh. Baylor Scheinman spent most of the season down there. Scheinman improved way quicker than anybody expected him to. We can have more on Scheinman. I'm sure there's going to be a Scheinman episode at some point. But he's just the next guy in that kind of conveyor belt of talent that's coming out of Maine. And I've been very vocal on the idea of the more players you can develop in your G League system, especially late second round guys or undrafted guys, the more players are going to want to sign with you in free agency, especially low end, like guys that got overlooked in the draft. Sam Hauser never got drafted, come undrafted and developed up. The Celtics are just building this reputation that for a long time, everybody looked at Miami. And Miami was the team that always found these diamonds in the rough and spent a year or two developing them before they became key role players. The Celtics are slowly developing that same reputation. I think that's key to being sustainable, especially in this new CBA era.
Yeah, that just has Brad Stevens DNA all over it. It's like that college mentality of where you're always going to be bringing guys in. You're always going to be developing them as the other guys move on or move out. The one thing about Drew Peterson, just the one final note on that, is it's Baylor. Baylor drank his milkshake, man. That's 100% what happened. As Baylor got better, Drew either stayed the same or got worse. And honestly, you really only need one of those guys. And if Baylor's going to do all the things that he does already, and plus have the playmaking, plus have the ball handling, where Drew's a little more limited, not as limited as like Hauser was when he started, but let's be honest, still pretty limited. That's it right there.
And that's just, how can I put it? You're stockpiling high level or at least good level talent on cost controlled deals. And you can talk about Baylor's like lower ceiling, like higher floor, but lower ceiling all you want. The flair that dude's playing with right now, like the braggadociousness, where I'm just going to throw passes around the back of my head. I'm going to drop dimes off behind my back and I'm a rookie and I don't really care because I'm playing with this. That to me is fun. And that level of confidence tells me that he's going to keep getting better and better, because when you're that confident and that comfortable on the floor, everything else will just come to you. And then you look at everybody else around him, like you mentioned, you're going to have JD Davison's going to keep improving. I think that Davison doesn't have that level of confidence, but he seems like a quietly confident guy that's really like all about the work. And that's huge. You look at Cornette, I think you need to find a way to keep him. Anyway, we're going off track. JD Davison being signed was great. Good idea. Definitely well earned, but I don't expect to see him. If we do, it was a mistake. But that leads us into a bigger question, right? And I think this is one that is split in opinion across the board. So I'm definitely curious with you. And that's the potential matchup for the first round of the playoffs. Options are Atlanta Hawks, Orlando Magic. Those two are going to play later this week. Winner faces the Celtics. Loser goes to face the loser of. My mind's gone blank right now. It's the problem with recording live, right? I could pull it off if I wanted to, but I'm just going to be honest. My mind's gone blank.
What are
Whoever
we
they
doing?
face, they're going to face.
The
It's
Knicks
going to be
Pistons.
it's going to be Heat Bulls, right? That's it. Yeah. So
Oh yeah, the 9-10. Yeah, that's true.
yeah, Hawks, Magic. Whoever wins faces the Celtics. Whoever loses has to go up against the loser of the Heat Bulls game. Got Chicago coming out of that. Miami have won the last 2 playing games against Chicago, last 2 years running. I think like the Bulls are finally at a position where they're a better team than what Miami is right now. Maybe not, but I really would like to see Miami losing the play-in. I'm just saying. But yeah, anyway, back to it. We're going to see one of Atlanta or Orlando. Personally, and I understand the Trae Young of it all. I understand the Dyson Daniels of it all, the Quinn Snyder of it all, the everything of all of it, right? I still worry about Orlando more. And I get that Orlando don't shoot the free ball very well. I get that they don't shoot it very frequently. There's something about Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs and everything else that they're doing, having KCP on that roster who's just knows how to win in the postseason. There's something about that team that worries me a lot more than what the Hawks do. And I just feel like that's because you can just really try and put Trae Young into a bind defensively. And we've seen the Celtics do that in the postseason in the past. And I get that Daniels is there to relieve some of that stress and some of that tension that can be created there. But I just feel like you can manipulate what Atlanta does a little bit more than what Orlando does, because Orlando has the size and the physicality to match the talent level. Do I think Orlando would win the series? No. Do I think it'd go 7? No. Do they worry me more than Atlanta? Yeah, they do. I think Trae Young is the best player out of both teams. Trae Young is definitely the most talented dude, but I think Orlando are the better team, and that's what worries me. Do you disagree? I know a lot of people probably disagree with that take.
Yeah, I actually 100% disagree. I like your reasoning, but I just don't want to go into a series with Jaylen Brown on one leg and he has to go up against Dyson Daniels. I just think that's a lot of work. That's a lot of pressure. It's just a hard grinding series. And let's be honest, we're talking about the difference between a sweep, a gentleman's sweep, and going 6 games. That's really the margin of error
Yeah,
here.
you're winning either way.
Exactly. But I just don't like the idea of a lot of stress, a lot of like close games at the end. Trae Young's going to get you 2 games where they're in it, like where he's just on, he's doing everything right. He's balling from 3, he's playmaking. He's probably got 12 assists too. He's going to have 2 games where he just goes off, and we've seen it. We've actually matched up with them in the playoffs and they won a game or 2. So I just am so annoyed by the Hawks. I don't want to deal with it. The Magic just don't score enough. Like, I love Paolo, I love Franz, but besides that, they just don't put enough numbers on the board. Pusha T would say.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think that you are right. The Dyson Daniels swing factor there is huge. I also think Trae Young is the most likely to win a game for you against you at any point. I think the Andre Hunter move might come back to bite them a little bit now that they're back in the postseason. You could come up against the Celtics. Hunter would have been nice to have a lot, but I get it. Like, they needed to do what they needed to do. Now, the other reason I'm more scared of Orlando, and you can argue that Atlanta have played Boston just as closely in previous postseasons, but in the last few matchups between Boston and the Magic, I think going back over 5 or 6 games, the Magic have a winning record against the C's. And that's a concern for me. Now, I get it. You can add in the fact that Boston probably wasn't healthy for a lot of those games. They probably came into those games as scheduled losses, or just they took their foot off the gas, played with their food a little bit. Orlando were too young to realize this is a game they should be losing. They come in with some stupidness and some physicality that you don't expect. I still think that they match up well with the Celtics, and it's all well and good saying they don't score enough, but if they can limit Boston from scoring, then you just need to score more than the other guy. And the Celtics did that a lot in last season's postseason. If you remember, 11 out of 19 games, they held guys to under 100 points. I think the Magic can do a game where they really try and put clamps down. They've got the size and length to match up positionally. And that's what I look at in the first round is, one, who has the best player on the floor? That's going to be Boston, right? And they've probably got the best 2 players on the floor, best 1. And then if Jalen's on one leg, maybe Banchero gets that second spot, and then Brown, or however you want to look at it. But size-wise, athleticism-wise, I do think they match up quite well. Now, again, I could be wrong. And either way, as you said, we're splitting hairs between a 6-game win a gentleman's sweep or a sweep. It doesn't really make a difference. It's unlikely the Boston Celtics lose that game. But I do worry about the Magic. And I think it's completely fair that people worry about the Hawks too.
My worst case scenario for the Hawks is just because it's Jalen Brown's hometown. He likes to overcompensate when we play Atlanta. And I think he should be easing himself into the playoffs, not trying to be the man and drop 30 in front of his family and friends. I really don't like how Jalen turns into Super Jalen when he plays the Hawks. Like, he ignores everybody else and goes into his own mode. I think he's mature enough to understand, don't do that now. It's the playoffs. It's not like a regular season game where you can get away with it. But also, playing at home, you fight probably 30 family or friends. It scares me. The Hawks scare me for so many more reasons than Orlando. The only thing that scares me in Orlando is maybe they take all their kids to Disney World.
There's Gators in Orlando. That's always a risk. You know what I'm saying? No, but I get it. And the Jalen in Atlanta kind of caveat makes a bunch of sense because we have seen Jalen try to be Super Jalen. We have seen him want to be the guy. And there's been times where that's worked really well for Boston. There's been times where it hasn't really worked really well. What I'd hope is, and this is me just talking, obviously no information whatsoever, but what I'd hope is he'd completely understand the situation is him physically. And that would just allow him to be a player, not be a role player, but play a role rather than trying to take over because he's not, or potentially not, physically capable of being that version of himself because of this bone bruise. Because I do expect Jalen to play. I do expect him to be a viable scoring option. I do not expect him to be all-star Jalen. And that's a problem in itself that we can talk about if you want. But I don't care if it's against Atlanta, Orlando, New York, Cleveland, whoever. I don't expect Jalen to be a primary option in terms of handling the rock a bunch, being asked to change direction on a dime where you've really got to have that lateral quickness, which can force you to put some load on those knees to create the burst. I don't expect that because I just think that you're asking for that knee to degenerate a little bit. I'd hope that they let him get to his spots, feed him where he's comfortable, let him do what he needs to do. The other concern is, like, is he going to be your point of attack guy? I don't think he is this postseason because, again, that lack of burst and lack of lateral quickness, plus you're fighting over screens, you're navigating screens, you're trying to get in front of guys, you could clash knees. There's just risk there. I just think you're not getting that version of Jalen. So if that is the case, you don't have to worry about Jalen trying to be that guy against Atlanta. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing we can discuss.
Yeah, that's what terrifies me is the idea of the Jalen plus bench units. I don't even think that that can be an option with this version of Jalen. It has to be like Jrue and KP with them just to kind of anchor, just level out the offense because we had success when he was rolling with Jalen, with Sam and Luke, just like kind of Tatum does. Obviously not as good, but still very good. But with this version of Jalen, I think on offense, he's figuring it out and it's going to be a new aspect of his game. He's talking about watching Paul Pierce tape. I hope he's watching tape of like DeRozan. I think this would be a good evolution of his game offensively, not just solely relying on like strength and athleticism, having these little moves. I think it's going to really help him in the long run. I just worry about him defensively with this limited knee.
Defensively is a big concern. I'd expect him to get hit a little bit more. Not to the point where it's, oh, you don't want Jalen switching on to guys, but maybe you scram him out of there a bit more. Maybe you peel switch him off guys a little bit more frequently. You just don't ask him to take on the toughest assignments. Now, that's a problem in itself because Jaden's athleticism makes him such a high-level defender. I completely agree. Offensively, this could help him become a more well-rounded offensive guy. In terms of running them second units, Tatum ran them really well last season. I'm actually really comfortable with the idea of going back to Tatum running that second unit, allowing Brown to be like your go-to early game scorer, which is fine because then his knee's probably at its freshest point then anyway, so you can lean on him a little bit more early and go away from him as the game goes on. Boston did that all season last year. They did it during the postseason too. It makes sense to me. Do I think that's ideal? No, because you've been playing a specific type of way with specific rotations all season, and now you've got to move away from them. But you're just going back to a version that still worked. It's a rotation that won you a championship, so it should be okay. I'd like to see Brown just playing off ball more, coming off screens, as you said, copying that Paul Pierce, that DeMar DeRozan kind of style where you're coming off screens into space in the mid-range. Like this time yesterday, I tweeted about it. You can pierce cut from like the mid post into the paint and get the ball there. You can work on the elbows, go to your little Gordon Hayward stop, turn around, fade away, and pop type thing. Does Brown has such an elite mid range game that I feel really comfortable just playing him there if you need to, away from having to explode at the rim, away from having to try and create separation. There's going to be space in the middle of the floor because teams are going to play drop. And when they play drop, Jaylen can be your counter. So there's ways he can be really effective without needing to be who he is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think this version of Jaylen Brown will be fine for the entire playoffs, honestly, but it just puts more pressure on Porzingis to be available because not having Porzingis and having this version of Jaylen Brown, that's a recipe for disaster when we start getting later in the playoffs and it's Cleveland, or if it's even the Thunder or Lakers or whoever in the finals. This is a big playoffs for Porzingis. We need 3 rounds at least out of him desperately.
Desperately. I wrote about this on, I think it was Friday or Saturday for the Celtics Chronicle. If you're watching live on Twitter, head over to CelticsChronicle.com. Make sure you sign up. I think it also came out on Celtics blog around about 30 minutes ago because it got posted there too. Was just about how Tatum and Porzingis are the duo this year. It's not a Tatum and Brown led team this for the postseason. It's a Tatum and Porzingis led team because where Brown is, Brown's now going to need to take a bit of a step back. And I'm okay with that. I think that Porzingis and Tatum as a 1-2 punch are great. They're both multi-level scorers. They both can stretch the floor. They can create for others. You put Porzingis in the delay and run actions around him. He's really good at picking the pass. Tatum can just do a bunch of different things. I don't need to break them down one by one. When you put those two together, I think with Brown as like your tertiary guy, your guy that's going to be the zone buster a bit more, that's going to work in the mid-range. Then you've got KP's post-ups, Tatum's post-ups. There's a lot that works for you there. So I'm not concerned at all. Do I think that not having all-star level Jaylen lowers the championship ceiling slightly? Yes, of course it does. If your second best player isn't as good as what he usually is, odds are your ceiling lowers. That's just logic. Doesn't matter how good your overall team is or how deep it is. He's your second best player or he's your 1B, however you want to discuss it. He's one of your top guys. If one of your top guys is hurt or isn't at 100%, everything around you just gets that little bit worse. So there's just going to need to be more commitment, more buy-in, more lock-in, more hunger, more hustle. Fight for them open balls, do what you need to do. But I'm not overly concerned. I'm not coming into this thinking it's going to be like a conference finals exit or anything like that.
Oh, absolutely not. This version of Jalen's been limited all year, and we're still a 60-plus win team. So I think it just shows the evolution of Tatum, and then it just goes down the list from there. You could add in what Pritchard did this season. We've talked about Porzingis when he's available. It might put some pressure on Jrue Holiday's kind of finding his groove back slowly, but he wouldn't have what I call a great season. I would expect a better playoffs than what we've seen from the regular season from Mr. Jrue.
For sure. I think that the corner 3-point shooting has been a concern this year compared to what it was last year. Not in general, just it was so high last year that the decline was always going to seem more drastic than what it probably was. But that's been a hindrance. I think that the finger's starting to get better. Jrue is such a good player in terms of his scalability, right? And I talk about scalability a lot. And that's, from my perspective, that's your ability to play a certain role and then expand on that role when the team needs you to, and then retract back into your normal role. Maybe Jrue's a primer. Maybe you have Jrue as a secondary playmaker and he's a fourth option on offense. But in any given game, maybe Brown and Tatum don't have it going and Jrue needs to step up where he can scale then. He can expand his role during the game and really absorb a lot of that pressure and a lot of those responsibilities and still shine. And then once everybody else starts clicking again, he can just retract back into his normal role. And that scalability, Derek White's got it, Jrue Holiday's got it, Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, all these guys are just so scalable in terms of their usage rates and what they can give you on the floor in different ways that it makes life a lot easier when one guy's struggling, or in Jaylen Brown's case, it isn't 100%. So I think Drew's actually going to have a bigger postseason than some people are believing, just because he might need to be a lot more scalable throughout games. There might be games where JB is really cooking and it's okay. There might be games where his knee stiff or his lateral quickness isn't there, the burst isn't there, and you need Jrue to scale that production. That scalability is going to be huge in Jrue this postseason. I think that he's going to have a really impressive run. Either that or it's going to go absolutely awful. Yeah, I don't think there's a middle ground here.
No, and honestly, for him at his age and with that contract, I'm not saying it's a tryout because Jrue's already forever. The trade worked. We got the championship. He played phenomenal last year. But for his
So when
long-term future with the Celtics, I think this playoffs is going to be absolutely critical to him, just like it is for Porzingis. If Porzingis isn't available, he misses a bunch of games again. When the summer comes around and it's time to get out that checkbook and figure out who we're going to keep and who we're not, it's all going to be about who showed up this playoffs. Like I said, last year was last year. We got the banner. Everybody did their role. Porzingis played only a handful of games, but still, that game one of the finals is legendary. It's one of the best performances we've ever seen in the finals. But like I said, it's Jrue, it's KP. If these guys want to be here next year and they want us to fit out that bill, this is going to be where they show it.
Yeah, baby. And I do think that there's going to be a change. I think Wick made that very clear during his comments to WEEI. And if it wasn't clear, he definitely alluded to it enough that it was easy to read between the lines. Jrue makes a lot of sense as being that guy. I know that Bobby Marks mentioned Sam Hauser could be that guy. I know that some people are looking at Porzingis for being that guy. And then obviously there's a small contingent of fans that think that it should be Jalen Brown due to this knee injury. I don't agree there. But I understand there is a contingent, and that's fair. You're allowed your opinion. What I will say is, whoever they do decide to move on from, it's going to be hard to replace them because this unit is so intertwined in what each guy brings to the table. I trust Brad Stevens to make the right call. I do think, as you said, that postseason production will play a part. If Jrue Holiday starts looking his age and doesn't scale when he needs to the level that you need from him, maybe it's him. His contract is one of the bigger ones that you can move on from. That is an off-season topic, though. I think that getting too far into that now is disingenuous just because of what this team has achieved to finish second in the East, despite not having Porzingis for 50% of games, having Jrue Holiday underperform being an out of rotation, having Sam Hauser struggle with the back, Jalen Brown's knee towards the end. There's been so many hurdles that this team has had to go through just in terms of injuries, right? Before we even start looking at the standings or being defending champions and everything that comes with that, they still managed to get above 60 wins for the second time in 2 years. The first time that's happened since 2008, 2009. Shout out Andrew Claudio from Knicks Film School. He was actually the one who put me onto that. All that success, I think it's disingenuous for us to look too straight to the off season when there's still a chance that this is a championship run. So I will say that, yeah, it's likely that a move gets made, but I'm not looking that far ahead just yet.
Yeah, exactly. We do need to appreciate greatness while it's in front of us because this isn't normal, guys. Even our over-under before the season started was only 58.5 wins. We exceeded that with our starters playing 13 less games than they did last year. Like, they were together 13 less times than they were last year. We were not healthy this year, yet we still passed that 60 mark, and we almost matched the mark we had last year anyway. So that's what's really impressive. It's hard to defend a championship. It's hard having that target on your back every night. And we met that challenge head on. Like, we had that one little spat between January and February that everybody goes through a little slump here or there. What did we finish the season? 26-9 the last stretch? No, it was even better than that. It was like 29-6.
With what was it? Never lost
Was
more
like
than 2 consecutive games all season. Dude, if your worst losing streak of the year was 2, just 2, then everything went well. Do you get what I'm saying? I think that when you look at the way this team played just overall with the amount of pressure and expectation and hurdles in front of them, a 2-game losing streak all year is completely ridiculous, man.
and set a Celtics record for wins on the road. Like, we were the road dogs.
Woof. Oh, woof, road dog. I don't know if you grew up in that WWF era or WCW where it was like Billy Gunn and Road Dog.
Of course. Oh, you didn't
Yeah.
know. Your ass better call somebody.
What were they? They were 39-13 in the conference, 33-8 on the road, 4-2 in overtime. There's 8-2 over their last 10 games. This team just won, dude. And it's wild to say that Cleveland still managed to finish with the first seed, but they had, 2 different 15-game win streaks. Like, Cleveland are for real, but I'm on record saying I'm not buying it until I see it in the postseason, so I have to stand on that.
Yeah, it's surprising, especially how they just fizzled out the end of the season. If we didn't have that January to February little like average slump, average for us, still better than most of the teams in the league, we would have had the 1 seed easily.
Yeah, easily. It would have been done. Would have been sewn up, but I don't think it matters too much. I'm very confident about the Celtics coming out of first round. I'm pretty confident about them beating the Knicks or the Pistons. Let's not be too disrespectful to Detroit. And then you're up against Cleveland, and that's when, to me, that's when it really starts getting like gut check time. But I think that the Celtics should be able to beat the Cavs. Should be able to beat the Cavs.
The Cavs get there. Let's not count out the Pacers, man. The Pacers are peaking at the right time. Halliburton got his All NBA back on. Like, he looks like a legit second team All NBA player now. And we haven't been able to say that for 2 years.
Yeah, he struggled, man. He went through a phase, but do you know what? All the all-star level guys, when they're about that age, go through a bit of a dip. Tatum did it, Brown did it. Not to that extent that Halliburton did, but it happens, right? It just takes a bit of time to break through, and progress is never linear. And I know that's cliche, but it's true. It looks like a graph, right? Sometimes you get worse and then you get better, and then you get a little bit worse, but then you get way better. Halliburton just got very bad. Not very bad, but by his own standards, he got worse, and now he got better. But I do think whoever they face in the East, I'm very confident against, as long as they can stay healthy. Jaylen is the biggest swing factor in all of this. But for me, that's pretty much everything I've got to say right now. I know we're going to be back later in the week. We're going to do some regular season grades, some regular season awards, blah, blah, blah. Just for the Celtics, I don't think we're going to expand it further for the league. But with that, Billy, anything else you want to hit on before we let everybody get out of here?
No, just get ready for war, guys. This is it. This is it. 16 wins. That's all we're asking for.
All right, man. If everybody watching, if you head over to CelticsChronicle.com, hit subscribe. There's a free plan. Sign up on the free plan. Head over to YouTube. Sign up. Taylor Talks Celtics. Hit that subscribe button. And then Billy's over at Letterboxd doing movie reviews here, there, and everywhere. Billy, where can they find you on Letterboxd?
CBO041. Check out Sacramento, starring Michael Cera and AJ Mendez, or wrestling fans would know her as AJ Lee. She is phenomenal in this movie.
With that, everybody have a great day. Go Celtics, and peace.